Tom Brady's role as minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, as well as his role as Fox Sports' lead NFL broadcaster. This story, it's obviously been simmering under the surface for over a year now, but it kind of blew up yesterday when Peter Schrager, in his debut as an NFL sideline reporter, had a report about Tom Brady wearing the headset in the Las Vegas Raiders coaching booth, having multiple meetings a week with Chip Kelly, really being much more involved, at least outwardly involved in the Raiders operations than we once thought. So, Brendan, I'll go to you first. Do we think this kind of new development is going to, manifest itself in any sort of changes in Brady's access to other teams, access to production meetings, which he recently just got? Is this going to change anything?
I don't think it'll change anything, to answer your question. I feel like I have two other questions that I've been chewing on. I don't remember which of you guys I was on with last week where I joked about the word cloud of our show, and I said that Pablo Torre's name was probably outsized on that. Tom Brady's name takes up 80% of it. Like, we have chewed on every single angle of this thing, but so the first one, which is smaller, Ben, is, do you think that this has been happening in more games and they just happened to point a camera at him because he was announcing this Saudi Arabian flag football game and it was kind of known that he was there and publicized, and so some ESPN producer or camera operator thought to look? Or do you think this really was the first time that Brady might have tried something like this?
I don't think he gets the opportunity to do it because he's usually somewhere else on Sundays. And so the fact that it was a primetime game did put him in a position to do that.
That's true. And it is the Raiders. So I guess if we look back last year, did they even have another primetime game? I'm not sure.
Yeah, not that I can recall. So it's not happening obviously on a weekly basis because logistically it can't, but it did feel, I don't know, something about the entire moment almost felt manufactured. And not necessarily on Brady's end, but more so on ESPN's end, where you have this beautiful shot of Tom Brady sitting in the coach's booth wearing a headset as you go to Peter Schrager with a hit, just detailing in depth, like the first on record hard reporting we have about just how involved Tom Brady actually is with the Raiders operation. That to me is what stood out. But yeah, I don't think this is obviously not happening on a weekly basis, but it's hard to see that clip and listen to Peter's reporting and have any kind of takeaway other than that he is heavily involved with the Raiders weekly game plan operations.
Right. Like, I feel like this is a story that we have covered many times in the last year. And this doesn't really change much in terms of like what our perception of, Tom Brady's role with the Raiders is. But I think for the general public, this could have been a tipping point, right? Like actually seeing him with a headset at the game, even if, he doesn't have a lot of opportunities to do that, it shows that, whatever information he's gleaning from these other teams, whether it be in production meetings or just by way of being a broadcaster, right? You're going to hear things. People are going to tell you things that you might not necessarily get if you're just Joe Schmo minority owner of any other NFL team. And I think that matters to people, especially when, the Raiders are actually, potentially a competitive team this year, more so than they were last year. And I think the NFL is going to get some heat over this. And it's interesting because of, how they changed the policies this year to allow him to virtually attend these meetings. I'm wondering if there's a possibility here where we get a backtrack and, maybe Brady is no longer allowed to attend those meetings, or at least there's something symbolic done by the NFL to at least, kind of put people's concerns aside.
I think, I'm not as convinced there's enough public backlash to change anything. I think for a lot of the general I think there's a large portion of the general public who doesn't even, I'm not going to say comprehend, but just doesn't care about the conflict of interest. To them, it's like,
it's a weirdly complicated kind of thing to understand. I agree with that, especially because his role with the Raiders is still so amorphous, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
I think that, like, to Drew's point, seeing it helps, but I don't know. I think people just don't think owners are involved. I feel like it kind of boils down to that, where people just wouldn't associate an owner with being around enough to play a role if you wanted to.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I actually saw in our comments, it does put kind of Fox in a weird position if you want to talk about like how Brady handles himself on the broadcast. And that was something we talked about a little bit last year when it came to the Lions playoff game where the Raiders were getting ready to interview Ben Johnson. I think though this could lead to change, but the change is going to have to come from the 31 other teams. And if I'm the 31 other teams, I'm looking at this, and even if it's just optically, I'm saying like, this sucks. Like this makes us all look like idiots for talking to this guy. And I wonder if we get to a situation where, especially if they're calling a Chiefs game or calling another AFC West team, or even an AFC team for that matter, like if he just gets shut out of these meetings, if they're just coaches and players who are flatly going to say, I'm not going to talk. What are you talking about? I'm not going to talk to this guy.
He alluded to that when he was on Chris Collinsworth's podcast heading into week 1, and I wrote up his comments because it was really the first time it wasn't a deep addressing of the situation, but he at least like confronted it and had to say something. And he basically was like, I never expected these guys to give me much in these meetings anyway. And he didn't say that's because of the Raiders ownership situation or because he's Tom Brady and is still doing so many other things beyond just being a broadcaster. But if you kind of read between the lines, that might have been what he meant. And so I would imagine that's the first change is the uglier this gets, no one has to talk to Tom Brady. I mean, like you're required to go do this stuff. It's collectively bargained if you're the quarterback of the team that's playing and he's broadcasting your game, but nobody's forcing you to bring the play sheet in and walk him through it, So I would imagine that's the easy one. I would also say ESPN or Fox is probably completely pissed at ESPN for putting them in this situation. That was not necessary. No one required ESPN to do all that yesterday, and yet they did. I don't know if it was any sort of intentional rivalry thing there, but it certainly didn't help Fox. But yeah, that was the other question I was going to ask was why the NFL they seem to be the one who has who's kind of keeping this going the most. Like obviously we get why Fox wants it. They're paying him a whole bunch of money. They clearly believe that he moves the needle for them in a variety of ways, and it's valuable to have him on their roster and be on the biggest games. The Raiders want Tom Brady around because they're a shit show. And to your point about Drew, like them being more competitive, Ben's guy Chip Kelly doesn't seem to be working over there. So I'm not sure we really have to worry about the Raiders making a push for the AFC West or anything. But like the owners apparently expressed skepticism way back when he made his bid to buy the 5% of the team that he was getting a discount. So I don't think the owners have always been on board with this. They probably don't want him scuttling around their facilities and getting, company secrets. So it feels like I just come back to the NFL. Like the NFL, the Shield, the people in New York City who run this league seem to be the ones who could put a kibosh on it and are not doing that. And I don't really get why, because they don't need another 20 years of Tom Brady around to keep this sport popular or something. Fox is going to be fine. People love Greg Olson. They loved Troy Aikman before that. Like nothing. The NFL doesn't need Tom Brady calling games for Fox in order for this to work out, or him running the Raiders. So that's the part where why can't they just create a rule or lay down a punishment or let the owners vote on whatever? That part is head scratching.
For me, the interesting part of this is if you gave Tom Brady truth serum, would he rather be the top NFL broadcaster at Fox, or would he rather be a minority owner in the Las Vegas Raiders? Because I think that would tell you where his ultimate loyalties lie. Like if he
has to be the Raiders.
I think it's 100% the Raiders.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
He didn't go to Syracuse to call games. He's a fucking quarterback. He wants to run a team.
Right. So if we're operating under that premise, then like this becomes a much bigger issue. And I think we're just kind of at the start of this, to be completely honest. If we get other reports now that, Tom Brady is, in constant contact with the coaching staff and helping with scheme or anything of the sort, this is something that's not going to go away overnight. And, it's up to the NFL, like you said, to actually, act on it. Is it worth the headache from the other 31 owners to keep Brady on the broadcast team at Fox? We'll see. Fox has a pretty clear succession plan there if it ever comes to that in Greg Olson. So Ben, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, do we want to should we throw in the Saudi Arabia conversation now too?
Why not?
We're just taking the podcast to Riyadh next week.
Hey, I'm
helping
all
to
ears.
promote it.
I will say it is pretty funny to see now. I mean, I've been following this Saudi Arabia stuff going back to WWE in 2018, and to see them now not only get into mainstream sports with the NFL, but to use the exact same playbook where when they do these WWE shows, they're bringing back all the legends. Like they literally are just bringing back all the old guys to do these big shows, and to see them repeating the same playbook, but with flag football, and it's Tom Brady and it's Gronk. There's just something funny about the idea that that's the playbook they're emulating for all of this.
It's worked so well with every other sport they've gotten into.
Yeah, it's
made a lot of people rich.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it feels like an episode of Succession or something a lot of the time. It's like, I guess I could chart down a way that this sucks for regular people if I wanted to, but it's a lot of hypotheticals and extrapolations to get there. It mostly just seems like rich people having fun, and I guess Tom Brady can go throw a football around a little bit and no one will watch it, and then they can, pay each other. My final word on it is, and Adam Schefter tweeted out something earlier, which is that the league has confirmed that Brady didn't break rules by being in the coach's booth, which that was the Raiders coach's booth at their home facility. So I don't think anyone really thought that they broke the rules, but I don't know. I would just caution reporting from that guy about this situation is maybe how I would close it, because he's the same fellow who insisted all year last year that Brady barely even knew anybody in the Raiders building and didn't even own a black or a silver T-shirt. You know what I mean? If you were to,
he thought
to
they still played in Oakland.
Yeah, exactly. He flew to Oakland one time and realized he was in the wrong spot. That's how little he ever had to do with the Raiders. So that's clearly not true. And so that just adds another wrinkle, which is why so many parties appear to just want this to happen so badly. And then you turn the TV on Sundays and it's milquetoast nothing broadcast, and the Raiders can't win a fucking football game. So it's what is the push? Why is this so important to everybody? But apparently it is.